UC Berkeley literally went up in flames in response to an attempted speech by Milo Yiannopoulos. We spoke to Yiannopoulos immediately afterward, and he had this to say about what had just happened to him.
All sorts of things happened to people who just showed up, not all of whom were fans of mine, but just who wanted to come and just listen to what I had to say. You know, and those people were attacked, physically attacked, right? This is political violence in response to perfectly mainstream opinion.
These young students at Berkeley, who are among the smartest in the world, put themselves on the line in defense of their fellow students. One of the highest things that we hope our people do in battle, and they're doing it already at school, to say we do not accept the violence that Milo brings to the people he chooses to out.
The First Amendment's purpose is for us to have a civil disagreement, to bring the strong argument, not violence. This was a terrible example, and if they're this bright, then this is dangerous, a sign of where we're headed.
And Jamila, you know, UC Berkeley claims to be the birthplace of free speech. Let's talk about the free speech on Milo's part. He wasn't allowed to speak.
He wasn't allowed to get up and read a list of illegals. He wasn't allowed to get up and give information that was going to be able to make it so that those who would do harm to such students could find them, could find their professors, could find their family and friends. That's what these students were protesting.
So let me just repeat your words. Let me just repeat your words. He wasn't allowed to read a list, or give information. He wasn't allowed to do that, yet the protesters were allowed to be riotous and violent, Horace.
Yeah, this is an argument that somehow something someone is going to say gives me a heckler's veto, not just to interject myself, but to burn the place down, to threaten and assault and attack people. What if this had been a gay pride event on the campus and some individuals decided to put masks on and they were going to shut this down because they didn't agree and they were going to do it with violence?
Well, that certainly would have happened at Berkeley.
This is unacceptable.
What is unacceptable is that Milo has made millions of dollars on going and bringing violence and bringing terror to individuals he doesn't like. We know that he went on a college campus and outed.
If that were true,
that is absolutely true. Milo had a $250,000
he would be indicted. He has not injured one person.
Berkeley's campus paper published no fewer than 5 separate editorials defending the use of violence to stop Milo from saying things they disagreed with.
Jamila, we agree. We agree on the right to protest the speech, but we disagree on the part where the violence was actually, I don't know, held on a pedestal by UC Berkeley. 5 op-eds published praising the violent part of it.
Well, these students are young people, and I'm sure that they may even change their minds, but the arguments they made were sound.
I think that with liberals, what's happened is a very small but very loud minority has started to really hurt the conversation and has tried to silence people. And all it's done is, look, it made Milo famous.
Clarify, Jamila, what violence did Milo himself perpetrate?
Milo himself did not throw a brick or hurl a slur.
It's just making this fight tougher for us. So, you know, I'm trying to awaken the silent majority of us that do believe in free speech, that are real liberals, not regressives, to fight back with our words.
Well, I guess I disagree with you on your point about it being a small minority. There's been a lot of polling on this, and the poll I saw yesterday showed that about half of self-described liberals on college campuses believe there are limits to free speech, and those end with what they call hate speech. A new study finds that a majority of America's young people oppose the First Amendment. In a survey of 12,000 high school kids, just over 50% of respondents said people should not be allowed to use any offensive words in public. An even larger percentage said people should not be allowed to make offensive statements on social media. The blunt question, are we doomed? John Sotsky is the Director of Strategy and Assessment at the Knight Foundation, which commissioned the survey there for the First Amendment, thank heaven, and he joins us now. John, is there any reason not to be really bothered by this? Isn't one of the key things you learn in school as an American that our country is predicated, among other things, the First Amendment, but they don't seem to have learned that?
91% of students agree that people should be allowed to express unpopular opinions. But as you're referring to, when you start to ask them about, should people be allowed to express opinions that are offensive, then support starts to dip.
Oh, it doesn't just dip, it goes below 50. The majority says no. And so how can you be for the First Amendment if you don't think that people should be allowed to say things you disagree with?
It's a great question. So I think one hypothesis is that students don't truly appreciate what the First Amendment is, and that part of the First Amendment isn't a right not to be offended.
What about the actual leaders of the American left? It's political leaders. I didn't hear any of them, not one of them, say, hey, Milo Yiannopoulos ought to have a right to say what he thinks. Like, this is America. Why did nobody say that?
Well, I did, and I'm the president of the College Democrats of Maryland, and I hope that people will follow suit. I hope that maybe people will be watching tonight and they'll go, you know what, I agree with him. I agree. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I think people read my article that agree with me. I've heard from people who read my article that agree with me, my op-ed, that is.
People are self-identifying into tribes. They're like-minded, and they're not exposed to the opinions of others. And I think that's increasing a lack of tolerance to hear viewpoints that are not ones that they're accustomed to encountering through the networks that they travel in.
And they're kids, and so they're judgmental and lacking wisdom and all the things that go along with youth, in addition to good health and optimism. According to your survey, and thank you again for doing this survey, almost half of teachers, adults in charge of our kids, agreed, 53% agreed that you have the right to exercise your First Amendment rights, but 47% said you don't. So how did that happen?
Adults tend to be slightly more supportive of First Amendment issues. In this case, the discrepancy is not that much.
I'm very, very hopeful that maybe I'm starting a conversation amongst liberals, along with people like Bill Maher and others, where we say this is not okay. That liberalism means supporting free speech.
So we go to work and we leave our kids in the care of adults who we believe are making them better people, but it turns out that almost half of them don't believe in the First Amendment, which is like the bedrock of American life, culture, civilization. So it makes us different. It's what we have of value. And they don't believe in that? Like, shouldn't we do something about this? Like, teach them?
I think it's not just a matter of teachers. And what you find in the survey is this isn't about blue states or red states. This is 12,000 students and nearly 1,000 teachers who are surveyed across all states in the country. So this is an issue that we're encountering across the board, and really thinking about how we become more tolerant of other viewpoints.
You know as well as I, because you do the surveys, that support for the First Amendment is noticeably higher among conservatives than among liberals. And that kind of jumps right out at you.
I haven't seen that. I think it's an issue that that really spans the spectrum. Quite frankly, I think whether it's incidents in Berkeley, which I know you've covered on your show recently, or people upset about Colin Kaepernick's gestures earlier in the year, I think you find outrage on both sides when it comes to different forms of freedom of expression.
Outrage is fine. You're allowed to be outraged. You're not allowed to prevent other people from saying what they think. Maybe that's the distinction.
These students did what they learned in class. They stood up together. They spoke out together.
Well, that's a shame.
Police showed up, and it's
They
better
learned,
than if
they learned to create a $100,000 in damage with broken windows.
This is the New York Times headline over the story about what happened last night. This is today. Berkeley cancels Milo Yiannopoulos' speech and Donald Trump tweets outrage. No mention of the fact that you were shut down by a mob. And this is the first line. A speech by the divisive right-wing writer Milo Yiannopoulos, University of California, Berkeley,
They're trying to insinuate. I mean, Bloomberg did the same thing. They said Milo Yiannopoulos sparks riots. I was like, hang on a second now. What are they trying to insinuate?
So where's this heading exactly?
Well, I feel actually more optimistic about this than probably most conservatives, because I've been on more college campuses I think than anybody else in America for the last 12 months as part of my tour, and I have seen a change in atmosphere. I've seen conservatives becoming more emboldened and happier. I have seen also huge numbers of alumni changing their positions on whether or not they're going to support their old schools. I mean, Missouri, when they kind of pandered to race baiters, they discovered they lost $30-40 million in alumni donations, and enrollment went down so much they had to close 2 dorms. You know this.
Yes.
This is going to start happening all over America, and my view is, the American higher education market, and it is a market, is going to fix this, because schools are going to have to pick. Either they go the direction of the University of Chicago and they say, you know what, don't apply here if you want safe spaces and trigger warnings. This is a place you come to be challenged. This is a place you come to expose yourself to people you think that you're going to hate, and see if it changes your point of view. Or they're going to go the direction of the University of Missouri, and only one type of those institutions is going to be financially viable in the long term.
Thank God my son goes to Colorado.
All right, let me talk about Berkeley for a minute. I just saw some chilling video from Berkeley where the quote anti-fascists were wearing black masks and carrying baseball bats and surrounding and beating people that they decided were Nazis. Unfortunately, I have my degree from Berkeley, one of them. I got my MBA there. And I gotta say, I'm pretty embarrassed by the whole thing right now. I donated a large amount of money to Berkeley in the form of a project to help organize the startup world over there. And at this point, it's pretty clear that Berkeley doesn't like me. They haven't said that, but just the fact that I write about Trump certainly means they hate me. If I'm not welcome in Berkeley, and by the way, I haven't gone to Berkeley, like physically. I don't think so. I don't think I have. I had been visiting there quite often because of the work with the startups and such. But I don't think I would ever go on campus again. It doesn't, well, at least until something changes. Yeah, so I'm done with Berkeley. I disavow them. Just because they disavowed me first. They didn't have to say that in words, but it's pretty clear that if I showed up over there, somebody with a mask and a stick would beat the fuck out of me. I'd probably put in $50,000 or so of expenses to help them organize. And really, I was doing it for the good of the world because the startup ecosystem is really strong over there. And it just needed a little help breaking out to really make some big differences. But I gotta say, fuck them.